They teach you that Martin Luther King had a dream, that Malcolm X was angry but learned to love, that the Black Panthers were scary militants who eventually faded away. But here's what they don't tell you. America took the most dangerous revolutionaries in Black history and turned them into greeting card quotes and safe school lessons. They stripped away the anti-capitalist fire, the international solidarity, the armed self-defense, and the concrete demands for economic justice. What's left is a Disney version of Black liberation that poses zero threat to the system that's still exploiting people today. Why did they sanitize these stories? Because the real versions contain a blueprint for revolution that would terrify anyone getting rich off the current setup. Today, we're breaking down exactly how America whitewashed Black history and why they're still scared of the uncut version. Picture Martin Luther King in 1967, 1 year before his death. He's not giving the dream speech. He's standing at Riverside Church in New York, speaking to a packed crowd about the real enemy. The greatest purveyor of violence in the world today is my own government. He's connecting racism at home to imperialism abroad. He's calling America the most violent nation on earth because of what it's doing in Vietnam. This isn't the king they put on the stamps. This king is talking about economic revolution. We must rapidly begin the shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society. When machines and computers, profit motives and property rights are considered more important than people, the giant triplets of racism, militarism, and economic exploitation are incapable of being conquered. He's naming capitalism as the enemy of Black liberation. But when's the last time you heard that quote in a classroom? They gave you the dream speech and hid the nightmare he was fighting. King spent his final years organizing the Poor People's Campaign, demanding massive wealth redistribution, and calling riots the language of the unheard. The FBI surveillance on him intensified after he started connecting the dots between racism and capitalism. J. Edgar Hoover called him the most dangerous man in America, not when he was talking about dreams, but when he was talking about taking money and power away from the people who had it. By the way, if you want more hidden stories like this, subscribe to Black Stories Untold. Now, let's talk about what they did to Malcolm. You know Malcolm X as the angry opposite of Martin Luther King. Fire versus peace, violence versus nonviolence. But that's exactly how they want you to see it, because it hides who Malcolm really became. After Malcolm left the Nation of Islam in 1964, he spent his final year building something that scared the establishment more than any angry speech ever could. He founded the Organization of Afro-American Unity, connecting Black struggle in America to liberation movements across Africa and Asia. He was building international coalitions, meeting with heads of state, taking America's treatment of Black people to the United Nations as a human rights violation. Malcolm wasn't just getting angrier, he was getting more strategic. We will work with anyone, with any group, no matter what their color is, as long as they are genuinely interested in taking the type of steps necessary to bring an end to the injustices that Black people in this country are afflicted by. This isn't the separatist they taught you about. This is a man building a global movement based on shared class interests. He was reading Marx, studying economics, developing a sophisticated analysis of how capitalism needed racism to function. That's why they killed him right when he was figuring out how to actually win. But the most dangerous story they buried is what the Black Panthers actually did. You've seen the photos: leather jackets, berets, guns. The media made sure that's all you remember. But here's what they don't want you to know. The Panthers fed more hungry kids in America than the government did. Their free breakfast for children program fed thousands of kids every morning before school in cities across the country. They ran free health clinics, testing for sickle cell disease that white doctors ignored. They provided free ambulance services when cities wouldn't serve Black neighborhoods. They started liberation schools teaching real history instead of the sanitized version. They organized tenant unions, fought slumlords, and built alternative institutions from the ground up. The FBI had a secret memo about the breakfast program. The program has met with considerable success and has resulted in substantial growth in party membership and influence over youth. They weren't scared of the guns. They were terrified of Black kids getting fed by revolutionaries instead of depending on a system that was designed to keep them hungry.
The Panthers proved you could build dual power, creating alternative institutions
while fighting the system. That's not militant extremism. That's revolutionary strategy. And this is where it gets darker. Every single thing I just told you was deliberately erased. This wasn't an accident or oversight. The FBI's COINTELPRO program explicitly targeted Black liberation movements with one stated goal: prevent the rise of a Black messiah who could unify and energize the masses. They infiltrated organizations, sent fake letters to create conflicts between leaders, and assassinated organizers like Fred Hampton. Hampton was drugged by an FBI informant, then shot in his bed at age 21. His crime? Building a multiracial coalition between the Panthers, white leftists, and Latino organizations in Chicago. He was making the nightmare scenario come true: oppressed people working together across racial lines based on shared economic interests. But here's the really insidious part. After they destroyed the movements, they rebuilt the memory. Hollywood, textbooks, and even well-meaning educators created a version of Black history that you could celebrate without threatening anything. Martin Luther King became the peaceful dreamer who asked nicely and got civil rights through moral persuasion. Malcolm X became the reformed, angry man who learned to love before he died. The Panthers became cautionary tale about taking things too far. This isn't just about the past, it's about right now. When modern protesters get called too radical or too confrontational, it's because you've been taught that the civil rights movement succeeded through polite requests and moral appeals. When politicians talk about reaching across the aisle and finding common ground with people actively oppressing others, they're using the sanitized version of King to shame anyone who fights back. When activists demand economic justice, they get told that's too extreme because you've never heard Martin Luther King talking about wealth redistribution or Malcolm X building international coalitions around shared class interests. The aesthetic of Black liberation is everywhere. You can buy Panther t-shirts and Malcolm X baseball caps. You can share King quotes on social media and feel good about yourself. But the ideology, the actual analysis of how power works, the specific strategies for taking it, the understanding that racism and capitalism are connected, that's been completely stripped away. They turned revolutionary programs into inspirational content. They made Black liberation safe for consumption. And this reveals the real function of whitewashed history. It's not just about making white people comfortable, though it does that. It's about making sure future generations of Black people don't have access to the strategies that actually worked. If you don't know that economic boycotts brought cities to their knees, you might not try them. If you don't know that armed self-defense protected organizers, you might not organize. If you don't know that international solidarity isolated America on the world stage, you might not build those connections. If you don't know that community control was the goal, not integration into oppressive institutions, you might waste energy trying to reform systems instead of building alternatives. This is why they erased the programs. The Black Panthers' 10-point platform demanded full employment or guaranteed income, decent housing, education that taught real history, an end to police brutality, and exemption from military service. These weren't just moral appeals. These were specific policy demands with strategies for winning them. Community control over police, land redistribution, community control over schools, alternative economic institutions. These ideas work, and that's exactly why they had to be buried. The sanitized version teaches you that change comes from above, from politicians and laws, and the goodness of people's hearts eventually winning out. The real version teaches you that change comes from below, from organized people building power and forcing concessions through disruption. The sanitized version celebrates individual heroes who sacrificed for others. The real version shows you collective struggle and strategic thinking that you can actually use. The civil rights movement didn't succeed because white America's heart grew 3 sizes. It succeeded because Black communities organized economic boycotts that cost businesses millions, because international pressure during the Cold War made American racism a liability, because disciplined confrontation exposed the violence of the system on television, and because the alternative, cities burning and the economy disrupted, was worse than making concessions. Power never gives up anything voluntarily. It has to be forced. But here's what they really don't want you to understand. The revolution isn't finished. The same economic system that needed slavery, that needed Jim Crow, that needed mass incarceration is still running. It just adapted. The same people who called King a communist agitator now quote him to shame anyone fighting for economic justice. The same system that destroyed the Panthers now sells their image back to you as fashion. The same power structure that assassinated Malcolm X now uses his quotes to promote black capitalism and entrepreneurship. Every time they sanitize a revolutionary, they're telling you the revolution is over. Mission accomplished. Problem solved. Don't organize, just commemorate. Don't build power, just celebrate heroes. Don't study strategy, just feel inspired. Don't threaten the system, just ask it to be nicer. This is the real reason they whitewashed Black history. Not to protect white feelings, but to disarm Black resistance. Not to avoid controversy, but to prevent revolution. They know that if people understood how power actually moves, how disruption forces concessions, how the state targets leaders who threaten capitalism, then nobody would keep worshiping progress, and everybody would start asking who's still benefiting from the current arrangement. The aesthetic without the ideology is containment. The inspiration without the analysis is control. The celebration without the strategy is defeat. They turned Black liberation into a fandom where people defend the image of leaders, but never engage the uncomfortable methods, contradictions, or actual programs. And that's exactly how they want it. So here's what you do with this. Treat every movie, every textbook, every commemorative speech as an introduction, not the truth. Read the actual speeches, letters, and organizing documents. Learn the strategies, economic pressure, coalition building, community control, international solidarity. Study how power responded then and how it responds now, and refuse to let them turn struggle into a feel-good story with no teeth. The revolution wasn't meant to be inspirational, it was meant to be effective, and that's why they're still scared of the uncut version. This was Black Stories Untold, and as always, thanks for watching. If you want more stories like this, click the video on your screen now.